Timon and Pumbaa nail art tutorial using Shrinky Dinks by Hotpinkzebrapolish. Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you the third video in my little Shrinky Dinks series. So this one is going to be Timon and Pumbaa that goes with yesterday's Simba. So it says lion and king when you put the two nails together, so you kind of read it across them. And like I said in yesterday's video, this is a perfect thing if you love to doodle and you love to just kind of draw and do whatever, but it's hard to draw on such a small surface like a nail because you have 3 times the space. So it's just something kind of fun and different that you can play around with. So I hope you guys like it, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. So to start with, just like I showed you in the previous videos, you're going to measure the width and the length of your nail and multiply it by 3. So not the length of your actual nail unless you want to just fit your nail exactly, but the length you want the nail to be. I suppose I should specify there. So then after you have that measured out, you can make a rectangle using those measurements on your Shrinky Dink page. So just measure exactly how it is, and there you go. Now if you make it, when you're measuring it, if it's a little bit wider than your nail is, it's not going to fit very flat on your nail bed because it's going to, kind of gap in there and push into your cuticles and your sidewalls. But you can always file it down. So if you're willing to file it and sort of fit it after it's baked, you can go ahead and measure it a little bit on the large side. Otherwise, you want to just make sure that it's exactly the size, that you don't do any creative measurements when you're doing this. After you have that done, go ahead and round out the cuticle area just so it'll fit a little bit better. And then for this nail, just like the previous one, I'm going to make it into a slight almond shape. So just draw that in as well, and then cut it out. After it, wait, no, now I'm a little bit ahead of myself there. Prior to cutting it out, I guess you could cut it out at any point. You wouldn't have to wait. You could have done it when I said that, but you wouldn't have to either. Anywho, I'm going to be drawing my Timon and Pumbaa. So I'm going to start with Pumbaa, since he is the bigger, he's the bigger guy on the nail, and I'm going to begin with his nose and snout area and then just kind of build my way out. When I'm drawing a character like this, usually when I'm sketching it, I like to start somewhere in the middle, whether that be starting with eyes or a nose or whatever I consider to be the shape that everything else builds off of. And for Mr. Pumbaa, it happens to be his snout, his nose. And then I'll just, like I said, build off of it. After I have him all sketched in, I'm going to be adding Timon above that. So he is standing on Pumbaa's, I think probably on his neck. It's kind of hard to tell in this image, but he's standing on top of him, and he's holding his hands up like he's victory. It's like a victory pose. And then I'm going to be figuring out how to write king backwards. So I'm going to start by writing it forwards. And then after I have it forwards, I'm going to go ahead and reverse it. When you're doing this, take your time to really make sure that you are reversing every single letter, and then write that on the nail. And at first when I did this, I put, with the lion from yesterday's video, the L was bigger and the ION was a little bit smaller, all caps, but that's how it made it look like one was capitalized. This one, it's the G that's bigger, and at first I wrote it with the K bigger, and later I fixed that because I was like, why doesn't this look quite right? So then I figured it out, and I'm going to be fixing it right now. So make your K smaller and your G bigger, because the L and the G, so it's the letters on the far sides of Lion King, are the bigger ones. And we're fixed. Then taking a Sharpie, I'm going to go ahead and make all of my letters nice and vibrant and deep. And also when you're doing this, you're going to want to add on these letters, but look at a logo, because to just make sure that you're thickening the right lines. Some of the lines are thicker than the others to give it a little bit more of a almost calligraphy appearance. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're filling these out. Then add a line above it, flip it over just to make sure it looks right before you go crazy and finish the rest of the nail, because if you were to have messed up at that point, it'd be easier to start over than if you did the whole thing. Then going through, still with your Sharpie, I'm going to be adding all of the really dark values in my design. So for Pumbaa, that's going to be in his nostrils, around his mouth, and a couple outlines on his eyes, and a little bit on his hair. And then for Timon, it's pretty much just around his eyes and nose. So there's not nearly as much on Pumbaa. Oh, I guess, and a little bit on the bottoms, the tips of his ears, and his back stripes. See? Oh, and his hands. See, I don't know what I'm talking about. Just add all of those darkest areas with the black Sharpie. Once it gets to be really small, a lot of these areas are actually dark brown or a really dark shade. They're not actually black, but once it gets that small, you're not going to be able to tell that anyway. So it's easier just to fill them in with the Sharpie. And then taking your colored pencils, go through and color in your little design. The other really fun thing that you can do with these is, if you didn't want to do the little drawing yourself and you wanted to have it be kind of coloring book style, you could take and you could print off your page of whatever the design is that you want and slide that underneath your Shrinky Dink material and then trace it. and it would work out really well. I'd probably recommend taping your stuff down so it doesn't slide on you while you're working on it, but that would be a really easy way of doing it if you wanted to, you know, simplify the sketching process. That would definitely work. Or if you are somebody that's coloring books, which a lot of us do, let's face it, you can just set your little Shrinky Dink page on top of your coloring book page, and then you can do it that way as well. So there's a lot of options with this. And I can remember back, I don't remember how long ago it was, I think 5th grade, I had to do a project. It was an advertising class in 5th grade. Yeah, that's what it was. Anyways, we had to make a slogan and a sign, and I ended up tracing something for it, and everybody in class was like, oh my goodness, that's so good, you're such a good artist. Nobody knew I traced it. I mean, in 5th grade, it's like, oh yeah, thank you. The things we do. Anyways, you can trace it. Nobody will ever know, and you can say, oh yeah, I did this all by hand. And you did, because you mean you did, so go ahead. So anyways, fill in all of your little characters there. When you're doing this, the colored pencils I'm using, I know I mentioned this in the last video, but in case you missed it, I'll mention it again. The ones I'm using are Prismacolor color pencils, but you don't have to use anything fancy like that. You can just use regular cheap ones. You can use ones from the dollar store if you want. You can use whatever you like, because once they shrink down, any little scratchy looking lines or any color that isn't quite as bright as you want it to be, all of that's going to go away as soon as it's been cooked. So you're good to go. Do make sure though that any white areas you do fill in with a white colored pencil or something that's white, because it will just be clear in the end here, and so you do need to do that. And I don't know if, say, Crayola or anything has a white colored pencil. So that is something that may be detrimental. After you have all of your colored penciling done, go through, and I'm using a highlighter just to highlight over everything, because that's not going to interfere with the colored pencil lines, but it will make the background blue. After it's baked, immediately wrap it around either a nail tip or a C-curve former, because that will give it the gorgeous C-curve that you are looking for. And if it doesn't turn out right the first time, bake it and do it again. And it's really fast. You have to be super quick when you're doing that, and just, you know, keep in mind you may end up burning your hands ever so slightly. Not enough that you can see a burn, but it's hot. Just, you know, bear that in mind. And so then I'm going to be gluing my Shrinky Dinks onto the nail after I have them filed all around the cuticle area on the sidewalls, just to thin them out. And I'm going to, after it's glued down, I'm going to encase the nail with a layer of clear builder gel. The reason I'm using clear builder gel is even on the glue you can kind of tell that it cracked the Shrinky Dink image just a little bit, not enough that you'd ever be able to see it unless you get up there with your eyeball right next to it. But I didn't know for sure what acrylic would do to it, which has actually been coming up quite a bit recently. But I use gel instead, just to be on the safe side, and fill in the gap underneath the nail, apply some gel sealer, file the nail into shape. Another cool thing that you can do with these Shrinky Dinks is you can do all of the drawing ahead of time. Say you want to work on your set of nails over the course of a week or 2 weeks, or if you're doing them for a special event, like you're going to a movie premiere and you want them to match, you don't have to do them that day, because you can do all the drawing ahead of time and all the art ahead of time, and then just shrink them and apply them that day. So it's a time saver in that matter too. Then after that, I glued some rhinestones around the cuticle and at the tip, and applied a layer of gel sealer, and that's all done. I think these two turned out fantastically, and I hope you guys like them as much as I do, and share recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!